there is a responsibility on all citizens to go in there and not just listen and go. But if you think they are not doing it well, go there and challenge them, but in a nice way, right?
Yeah. Be critical, but be civil, right? And be respectful. We can agree to disagree, but I don't think we need to tear the other person down. So you can either talk over each other, talk at each other, or you talk with each other, right? And if you want to talk with each other,
You just express your view. Alternative views does not have to be opposing views.
Yes.
It can
It can be more nuanced.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So you need to do that. And we are moving towards that, towards a greater participative, active community.
When I read in detail several of the manifestos, they were highly impressive, if you ask me.
Yes.
Given all the constraints, all the resource limitations, I think the days of the bicycle thief opposition and the days of Harbans Singh going up on Fullerton Square rally saying that Rajaratnam is a mee goreng seller, those days are over. Welcome to the second edition of IQ's panel discussion for GE 2025. And I've got some great friends with me here, and I hope some good analysis we can expect. Yes, Balji?
Let's hope.
So let's start with the first guest, Anthea Indra Ong. Anthea, you've been a very prominent, a familiar face, especially in civil society, civic society as well as in social activism. Very quickly, what really made you go into this space so strongly, especially after you became an NMP in 2018?
Thank you for having me, Viswa. Very happy to be here. I was already in the space before I became an NMP, which was why I was fielded as a candidate for the people and civic sector. Why? It really started about 20 years ago when I had my own personal brush with depression, when I was still in the corporate sector as a CEO. And I think that really showed me how there's so much to be done still, specifically in mental health, healthcare reforms in this area. But also from there, I saw the inequity, not just for mental health, but just the well-being of the different segments in our society.
Thank you. Michael Heng.
Hi.
We go back a long way as well, right?
35
years you've been in senior management.
Yes.
Whole host of organizations, large, small, and so on. But more significantly, you've been involved in grassroots work and community work for what, 40 years?
Nearly 40 years.
40 years.
Since the mid-80s.
Now, what's been your experience in doing grassroots work, sort of with the general elections?
There's ever-changing, right? There's no general election that's always the same. So people like to analyze general election by what happened before.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Not even for 2025. You look at 2020, tells you nothing about what's going to happen for 2025. The boundary changes, actually, more than that, even the boundary doesn't change. The residents have changed, right? So that changed the whole dynamic.
And the
on the
people around the constituency as well as beyond have changed.
And not only that, the younger people became older people, became voters. And they also changed. So the things that MPs or ministers have done for their parents may not carry the same weight with them. So every election, to me, is managing the change, right? Managing the expectation of young people, especially for 2025.
The first election that you were involved in, was it 1984?
84. I remember that was the year when Chiam Swee Tong won.
That's right.
And that was terrible. That was really very...
I was busy preparing for O-levels.
Yeah.
Just have to say that I'm not...
You have to
I have
say
to
that.
edit it.
we won't ask you what you were doing.
I was just born.
Reborn.
Okay, reborn.
Reborn.
No, but let's share some of those perspectives as well, right? Third guest, my dear friend Balji, PN Balji. I would say that Balji, you are today the most experienced media professional as far as I'm concerned.
That's not true, but never mind, go ahead.
I'm not saying the oldest. I'm saying the most experienced.
That also is not true, but never mind, you go ahead.
You see, that's why he's a journalist.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, he's being a pain. Now, 55 years in journalism since 1970. Am I correct?
70, yes.
70. Now, he has seen all the general elections post independence. Yes.
Yep.
And do you remember the 59 election?
I was still very young.
Okay. And Balji, you also worked for 5 newspapers, right?
Yep.
And you launched 2.
I launched only one. Only today. Yeah.
New paper, you didn't launch?
New paper was launched by Peter Lim.
Peter Lim.
Yeah.
But you were working with him closely
Yes, yeah.
in the launch. Yeah. So I hope that some of those perspectives you can share with us today. Now, I thought it would be useful for me to sort of start with capturing the key changes in the electoral boundaries without going into deep analysis of it, but for us to understand some of the implications on some of the constituencies, right? The newly named constituencies, they're altogether 11. Example, West Coast has become West Coast Jurong West GRC, right? Marine Parade is now Marine Parade Bradle Heights GRC and Sembawang West SMC, right? It used to be Sembawang GRC. The second point to make is the boundaries also changed for several constituencies, right? Even those that remain named the same way, the boundaries have changed. There are altogether 12 in this category, right? This includes East Coast GRC. East Coast, the name is the same, East Coast GRC, but the boundaries have shifted.
Correct.
Right? And because a significant number of people from Juchet, for example, have come in.
That's correct.
Right? Together with Edwin Tong, right? Yeah. Aljunied GRC has also sort of changed.
Yes.
Right? The third category is where there's no change to the boundaries. There are 9 in this category. This includes Sengkang GRC.
Yes.
It's remained intact as it was in 2020. Marsiling UT, which is Prime Minister's ward, Marsiling UT, GRC, that's remained unchanged. Bukit Panjang, single-member constituency, where Paul Tambaya is contesting with Liang Enghua, right? This is the second time they are going head-to-head, right? The first time 2020. And it's something that will be interesting to watch. And of course, Hougang SMC has remained the same,
Yes.
right? Now, the fourth and final category is where the constituencies are taken out altogether. That means they don't exist in the form they existed in 2020, right? And this includes McPherson SMC, Tin Peiling's stronghold. It now comes under the GRC, the Marine Parade GRC, right? And then there's Bukit Batok SMC, which saw head-to-head between Murali Pillai and Chee Soon Juan, right? And Chee Soon Juan was actually increasing his vote share. Now, the first time was by-election in 2016.
Yep.
By-election, right? Now, in the by-election, Murali Pillai won with 61.2% of the votes. Chee Soon Juan got 38.8%. Then in 2020, when they competed the second time, it narrowed. Murali Pillai won with 54.8%,
Yes.
and Chee Soon Juan 42%
Yeah.
from 38%. So the gap was narrowed. But that constituency is no more, which is the reason why Chee Soon Juan is now competing in Sembawang West. So these are interesting developments that we should all be attentive to. Now with that, I'd like to move on to an area that is becoming very, very important. Social media, the media itself, mainstream media, and mainstream media today appears to include Mothership. When you say mainstream media, Mothership started off as an alternative media platform. Today, when you say mainstream media, you're talking about the SPH, you're talking about MediaCorp, and you're talking about Mothership, right?
That's
now,
correct.
It's become very, very interesting, this election especially, looking at the number of podcast platforms that have come about. And I must say, I don't know whether you have participated in some of the platforms. They are pretty impressive. They are young people who are not trained journalists, but they ask smart questions, sharp questions, sometimes very deferential, overly deferential, but then again, they're young, right? But what is interesting is a lot of young people are tuning in to these podcasts, right? And we see a lot of political office holders going in there and engaging young people through these podcast platforms. And for example, the well-known ones are Yala Bhatt, these two young men who are fronting it, they're both from Wharton.
Yep.
Well-educated, smart people, and they ask very pertinent questions, right? The other one is Daily Catch-Up. Yep. It's a group of 5 of them or 4 of them, depending on the program. They play different roles. But it's very entertaining, but not frivolous, And we have another group called Lepak Conversations, Again, very sensible, but focused on the Malay Muslim community, for example. So I think it's a phenomenon, right? Quite formidable. The political leaders are using it, both sides, the alternative parties as well as the ruling party, And I'd like us to talk about the implications of this. Let's start with the journalist.
Who?
You.
Oh, I thought I'm no more a journalist. Right?
Once a journalist, always a journalist. my friend.
That's not true. Anyway, so the first thing I want to say is slightly a flippant remark, but you don't mind, that I'm so glad that I'm not a journalist today.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how I would have handled this not noise, but this plurality, which is a good thing actually. But I don't think I have the patience, the perseverance, and the age for it. So many voices out there, and when there are so many voices out there, you can expect, mistakes. You can expect things which should not be said. But so far, I have not noticed that, but it can go into that when they are all chasing viewership and readership, right?
Yeah.
Second thing is that the mainstream media, which includes MediaCorp, SPH, they are also getting into the act because they know they can't. They can't avoid
stay
it.
out of it.
Yeah, but when you go in with mainstream mentality into a podcast, right, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Right, because your mentality is like a grandfather, like me, right? But you have to try and behave like a young man or young lady, right? Which is damn difficult. I tried every day with my grandsons. I fail most times.
Like an ex-colleague of mine said, it's like mutton trying to be lamb.
Lucky you didn't say mutton trying to be beef. Okay, so I think the whole world has changed. I feel that it's going to change even more.
Yes.
Right? Because I don't see the mainstream media changing other than just going into the space. I really don't know if I were in the mainstream what I would do. Maybe I would resign. Quit, go, because it's very tough.
It's very tough.
Because you have this whole thing sitting on you, right? And not just you. Then you got your bosses. Then you got other bosses. I don't have to name them, or say who they are. So all these will complicate.
They are constrained because they are government linked. At one time, SPH
true.
was public
Yeah,
listed.
True.
But through the Printing Presses Act, there was control. And if you look at MediaCorp is government owned.
Yeah.
It's national broadcasting.
So there's that
I agree. Good point.
added responsibility as well,
Yeah, good
which
point.
is not going to go away tomorrow.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's not going to go. Yeah.
And therefore, the expectation that the government has on their conduct is very different from the other podcasters.
Okay, I agree, but I just had to add one small caveat to it, and that is, if you are a good journalist, you believe in journalism in the Singapore context, you will not just give in. You will try and work within the system, right? When I mean within the system, you work with the government, you try and convince government, maybe this is not the way to go. Okay, so I think that I'm not sure where it's happening, but I don't have any inside knowledge. So the online world is going to be, for want of a better word, very noisy as we get closer to the election. The politicians, the PAP politicians especially, are also using or courting online media as much as they can. And I'm very impressed with our health minister.
Yes, only
I'm very impressed. The way he has gone about courting the online media, the way he has used it, and the people who watch him all say he's very impressive.
And he's got the personality for it.
Personality is one, but he's also got the content.
Absolutely.
He's not going to go there and, so he gives you good content all the time.
But what I meant is, it's not very easy to do what he's doing.
Of course.
Because you do need a certain personality to be able to go there
True.
and be chill, truly chill. But when you're not chill and you try and be chill, it just comes across very forced.
I think he's also very clear why he's doing it.
Yeah.
Right, and he said that because it aligns to his role as a health minister. So you see the theme of all his videos are very aligned to health and fitness, right, and well-being. And I think that then allows him to.
But the other ministers can do the same thing.
Yeah, but what
But
I
I
mean
think
is
his
that
factor, his point is that you have to have a certain personality for it.
Which Cheong Tat did. I saw a video that he did.
Which
where
one?
Cheong Tat.
Cheong
Minister
Tat.
for Transport.
Which one?
I did
Daily
not.
catch up.
Daily catch up. I think he knew that there's going to be a lot of brickbats about MRT transport being an issue. So he was there, and he was natural. Because I know him, right? And he's natural, right? He talks about how he feel, right? When the East-West sign broke down, how he taped the video
emotions.
when he was in Hong Kong or China. Then when he came back, he didn't go home. He went straight there and he saw the long queue.
Yeah.
But that's Cheong Tat. So in a podcast, right, he show you his authenticity, right? He show you how he feel. He understand the pain, right? You cannot blame him, for the breakdown. And no one's going to blame him. But how he responds comes through.
I think this is that's the thing with podcast, right? So if I may also just chime in, I think it's a good thing. I completely agree with Balji about the noise and the inundation of views and perspectives. But at the same time, it's been a wonderful development for the public squares to be expanded so tremendously for political and civic engagement, and in particular for the opposition candidates to now have access to the people on a level playing field, right, as the incumbent. And that allows citizens and voters to be able to sort of see the candidates the way that Michael has just shared, right, as they are. I mean, in the past, opposition candidates would tend to have to go through only mainstream media in the way they're being sort of introduced or portrayed to the electorate. So I think it's a good thing. Having said that, so the expansion of the public square, I really like that part of it. And it sort of bring our political candidates into our living room. But I also think we need to be cautious about going beyond personality and promises. To Michael's point, a podcast is wonderful. And what you're doing here, Viswa, is also capturing us as we're laughing, in a very sort of personal, conversational manner. And it's wonderful because then you come through as real people. But we also need to go beyond seeing them as personality and what they say to, the substantive policies, the competencies that need to bring to the role as MPs as well as political leaders.
Yeah.
Can I just...
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Just jump in.
Just that what Anthea has just said, you see. I think this is normal.
Yeah,
You're just starting out. We are getting freedom in that sense.
Exactly.
For the first time.
That's right.
So you can expect some people to go over the top.
yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean that you shut it down.
Yeah.
No, I
But
don't.
so, I am convinced, I've lived here for many years, that the Singaporean is a responsible person.
Exactly. I agree.
He is not just going to go. And even if he is irresponsible, there are people who are responsible will shut him down. I'm convinced of that.
No, that's how the democracy
That's right.
of the podcast and online works. The commons actually rule.
That's exactly
Correct,
it.
yes.
Commons people will come in and say,
It
I don't
really
like this guy.
is very akin to.
So you get weeded out over time.
Yes, exactly.
Weeded
I mean,
out.
this is participatory democracy, right? To a certain
in the
extent.
podcast, the ministers, right, Hong Tat, Ong Yi Kang, comes across the way they talk to their fellow residents, right, from the heart. Put it this way, residents, you can't fool them. In 5 minutes, they see through you.
Absolutely.
Are you speaking from your heart? Are you authentic? So, but for Hong Tat, he tells you the truth, right? He tells you if he can help, he help. He says difficulty, there's difficulty, right? Ong Yi Kang the same. Ong Yi Kang honed his political skills from the time he started with the trade unions. With the workers, he spent many years.
I thought it was from the time I was a kid.
Yeah,
To his father.
could be.
From
He
his
spent
father.
many years.
Yeah, I think that would have for sure.
He spent many
he
years,
shared that,
not as a
actually.
very senior officer in the NTUC.
Yeah.
All right? So when he talked to the workers, the ordinary worker, right? You can't fool them. You can help them, you help them. They judge you by action, not by
See,
words.
what you said just now, 1 minute, just what you said just now, authentic.
Yes.
You see, people are, even now, some of the young people I meet, they are very discerning. If you're not authentic, I'm not going to listen to you. See, so that's the important thing, what you're saying. See, Chi Hong Tat, it worked for you, and I watched it and I was quite impressed as well. It worked because he remained Chi Hong Tat.
Correct.
He wasn't Chi Hong Tat trying to be an Ong Yi Kang.
Yes. Correct.
The problem is in social media, in digital media, there are people who try and mimic others,
Correct.
who try and come across cool when you're actually not cool. And there's nothing wrong with being not cool.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And so, and young people are very, very smart, very quick to see
very discerning.
falsehoods.
Yeah.
And today's young people, they don't want platitudes. They
Yes.
don't want you to talk down. Okay? They want action. They want promises. They want you to
that
tell
goes
them what
back-
you're going to do.
That
you
goes
see?
back to what Anthea said, right? Substance,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Now, substance needs to be there, but how you convey it needs to change.
Yes.
It cannot be stodgy. It cannot be preachy,
Yes.
you know, but the substance must be there. The
And
details
also
must
not
be
populist.
there. And not popular.
Yeah,
what
not
you come
populist.
across-
And popular and populist are different.
No, I just a quick one as
Yeah.
an example, because in the last few days, on a kind of a daily basis, I've been challenging somebody online about some of the things that he says, right? Not in the sense of disputing what he says,
Not confrontational.
but be less confrontational. Don't use words like stupid, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
this
yes.
and that.
Yes.
So I keep doing it on a daily basis. So I get friends who are asking me, why are you an enemy of this person? I say, no, he's a good friend of mine.
Yes.
Right?
But just the language you use.
But it's a language. I think so. The point I want to make is that there is a responsibility on all citizens to go in there and not just listen and go.
Exactly.
But if you think they are not doing it well, go there and challenge them, but
That's
in a
right.
nice way, right?
Be critical but be civil, right?
Great.
And be
That's the point,
respectful.
yeah.
We can agree to disagree,
Yeah.
but I don't think we need to tear the other person down.
That's right.
We can also look at issues.
It also doesn't need to be binary.
No,
Yes.
not at all.
Correct.
You know what I
not
mean?
at all.
Correct.
And it's not just content. We must always bring context, to the content. It's not one size fits all, for sure. And I think this is also what the current landscape and the current public discourses are working now, right? With social media, with podcasts. There's a conversation going on. So you can either talk over each other, talk at each other, or you talk with each other. Right? And if you want to talk with each other, we should do it like what we normally do,
Absolutely.
right?
And
In
you
person.
just express your view. Alternative views does not have to be opposing views.
Yes.
It can
It can be more
different
nuanced.
shades.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So you need to do that. And we are moving towards that, towards a greater participative, active community.
But in order for that to happen, and after this point, we need to move on to
Yeah.
the final area. There are some technical issues, right? See, the moment you have a lot of legislation or regulations or legislation like POFMA, People are nervous. People are concerned. Are we going to get Pothman? If I disagree with the government on something, not in a disagreeable manner, but I just disagree, and I'm very civil about the way I say it, I could still get Pothman. Why do I bother? So my own view is we need to go easy. The government needs to go easy on using or deploying POFMA, and sometimes give people the benefit of the doubt and use it only where it is an extreme situation, where it is seditious or something like that, where it's very clear, if it's a slight technical, factual error, leave it. Once you go there with the book and start throwing the book at people and say, that is inaccurate. It happened at 9:30, not 9:35. Because factually you're wrong. But you don't have to go and pick on those. So I'm saying this with absolute respect for the government. If we do want this spontaneity to take place, if we do want 1,000 flowers to bloom in that commons that we are talking about, it can be a fantastic election.
Yes.
But
yes.
there must be the assurance given by the powers that be that we are not going to throw the book at you.
Yes, but I think to be fair,
Yeah.
right, there's not been an example of Prof being
Not yet.
abused. Not yet, yes, but so far there's no instance.
No, we have
right?
hardly started.
So when you have,
But there's a whole history of POFMAs
Yeah.
being used on opposition political
That's
parties.
what we're
yeah,
saying.
but the point is, for example, what WP claimed that say, hey, some of the PAP policies are idea. They're not going to get Prof on there.
No,
Okay.
the point I'm making is I hope that there won't be, but I'm just putting it on the table.
And I would like to chime in to say that this is very close to my heart because actually POFMA was enacted during my term as an MP. And I actually, together with two other NMPs, tabled an amendment motion for the bill, right? And to your point, it is exactly for that we don't want a chilling effect with a law.
Yeah.
We also want to be clear. We clearly understand online harm and falsehood need to be contained.
Yes.
So that's no question. And I think we are all in agreement. But I think it's the use of the act.
Yeah.
So don't constrict or reduce the public space, the commons, as you put it, right? Which is why, to a certain extent, I just want to also say that the proliferation. I like your 1,000 flowers bloom. And if we use that analogy on podcast today, right, for general elections 2025, it may actually speak of a new era. Because, with Lawrence as the Prime Minister, I hope it's also speaking of him sort of letting this public square be expanded. The comments to be much larger than it used to be, right? Part of it could be it's very hard for you to police every single podcast.
Yeah.
But part of it could be that let this be the way I want this new era of me as the Prime Minister to be for the electorate.
And it's a great opportunity.
It's a great opportunity.
For him,
And I
for him to say this is a new chapter.
Exactly.
And part of the changing political landscape is really the opening up of the commons.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So people are now speaking up with all the podcasts.
Very important.
The podcasts are not controlled. Okay, and people talk, and then the people are not constrained in asking those questions. Not out of politeness, but because they understand.
It could have been, I would have to say, right? Knowing some podcasts and some media interviews that have been done in the past, it could have been. Because even it could have been controlled to a certain extent through the ones who are doing it, because I think there was one podcast where some of the podcasters said that in the past, they would have to send in all the questions and they were told that you cannot deviate from the questions asked and all that. But in recent times, Michael, to your point, it's not been so controlled.
Okay. I think we do appreciate that young people need to exercise, need to air their views, and in the way they're comfortable doing it. So it's an appeal. And I do believe that the government is cognizant of this.
Yes.
And I hope that we will have a very, very open and honest series of conversations during
And civil.
campaigning and civil. Right. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like us to very briefly but substantively talk about West Coast GRC. There are a few constituencies that are kind of hot, right? And West Coast is particularly hot this time. Okay. Why? Number one, Minister Iswaran is not there. Okay. And Desmond Lee is heading the team. Very credible. This is the second time he's heading West Coast or co-heading West Coast. Right. That's one dimension. The second dimension is the competing party, PSP. The chairman of PSP, Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, the Secretary General of PSP, Leong Man Wai, and the former Secretary General of PSP, Hazel Paul, all three of them are competing on the PSP ticket again in West Coast. Right? Now, the third dimension to understand is the boundaries have shifted in West Coast.
That's right.
40,000 people, I believe, have come in from Jurong West, which was part of President Tharman's constituency, former constituency, GRC, Jurong GRC, right? And we all know there's very strong loyalty for the ruling party in Jurong GRC as a whole, and specifically Jurong West. So these are the three dimensions that I can think of that will have an impact on the outcome.
Yes.
I'd like to hear your views.
Can I just add one more
please.
dimension? Sorry. And I think that is the fact that Leong Man Wai announced this is going to be the last election for Mr. Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, who's already 85.
Yes.
So I'm sure there would be some kind of an emotional connect with him, right? And what do the voters want to say to him? Would they want him back in parliament or not? So I think that somehow will have, I feel, will have some impact.
I agree. And also, not to forget that they were the highest, the best loser.
Best loser.
Which is why Man Wai and Hazel were in parliament
NCMP.
for the last term as NCMP. So
I think one of the things you have to note is that while the leadership of opposition parties are all can be found there, one of the glaring facts is that in the last election, none of the political opposition leaders were elected except for WP. You may not want to elect everybody, but surely the leader must carry enough weight to get voted in. Workers' Party got in. Jusudwan, though we noted that his vote count
has gone up.
But it's still a big gap between Murali, who is a minority, right? He beat Jisuchuan twice. So actually, to me, that's important because Uluwatu was a predominantly Chinese community.
You're right. I think that is one dimension.
Yeah.
One aspect. The race factor is one
Yes.
aspect.
But it is a non-factor. To me, it's a non-factor. But what I'm trying to say that while we put all the heavyweights, we say, because the heavyweights are there, therefore it's the factor. I don't think so.
What you're saying has some validity, but there is that emotional factor which we cannot ignore. Don't forget, to add on to what Balji said, Tan Cheng Bock was the MP of Ayer Rajah from the 1980s.
Yeah, but that was so long ago.
No, I know. But many of the people who were residents when he was MP of Ayer Rajah and a very, very, very respected MP of Ayer Rajah, are still around.
Can I just chime in?
Yeah.
This is
And
an
their
example.
children.
This is also an example of the consideration of voters on the personality, the history, the loyalty to a candidate or a party, but also to then go see their manifesto, right? What's substantive about this PSP team for West Coast this time around? So I did not go through all the manifestos, but I looked at the main opposition party ones. And I think this time round, Man Wai and Hazel had the opportunity for a parliamentary term to put forth a lot of their key and anchoring policy issues.
Yeah.
right? And one of which obviously has been the HDB, how to make HDB more affordable.
And the valuation.
The valuation, the affordable housing scheme, the way you sort of price the land. So aside from obviously Tan Cheng Bock, Dr. Tan Cheng Bock being on his last general election, which might factor in for some voters, and not to forget that actually my goddaughter in the last GE in 2020 was so taken by Tan Cheng Bock. He's like, oh, he's such a cute gong gong. He's like gong gong. And actually, Cheng Bock is the same age as my father, right? And my goddaughter is my niece. So he was talking about my father. It's like, so cute, so cute. And that's why he was called the hype beast, actually, in the last general election. So that's one part of it. But I think we also need to look at what are the opposition team bring forward. And I would say that their manifesto, PSPs, is actually really quite substantive. And they've also had the opportunity this time around to test it out in Parliament. Right, they put it forth. They have had actually responses from Desmond as the Minister of National Development,
and very credible,
sort of pushing some of this analysis. I'm not saying that I agree with everything they say in the manifesto, but definitely not just frivolous lah.
I want to chip in with 2 points.
Yes.
Cheng Bock, he's a name. You may say that when he first started, Raja and so on. Okay, but given the boundary change, the electors have changed. That's one. Second, Cheng Bock has been rejected not just in general election but also presidential election, regardless of the vote margin. So he is simply a famous politician. All right. Now, as for his two partners, Hazel, I think I like some of the things Hazel bring out in Parliament. Man Wai, he tried very hard to bring out a few things. He got knocked down a couple of times. So that's fine, but he dared. One thing about Man Wai, I think he dared to say things. But when he's pointed out to be wrong, he does apologize. So that's good. Right? But I don't see the way people look at it and say, look, this is really a hot seat. I don't see that hot seat because I see, again, the opposition. Right? Desmond also comes across here. HDB is an issue. But the valuation of HDB went way back into the 80s. So every election, there was this issue. So there are some old issues when you look at the manifestos of parties. If you are not going to form the government, I don't really believe your manifesto. You only have a team of 5 people, right? Don't tell me your game plan to win a World Cup. Sure, it points out to a few things that you like to bring up, right? Now, at the end of the day, you let people choose. Some people may not accept you, but it does go through your credibility. Manifesto is not about the ideas I had, then you will call it ideas. A manifesto is my blueprint to govern.
I'd like to invite each one of you to have a closing statement, but please keep it short, a minute, of what is it that you'd like to see? What is it that you'd like to see? Make it 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes. I think 1 minute is a bit hard.
Anybody got a timer here?
So 2 minutes.
Concession.
All right. What is it that you'd like to see done differently in this GE? Right? Now, for you to think a little bit, let me say my piece about manifestos. Right? It's very difficult to ask the opposition parties or the alternative parties to say, come up with manifesto of policy proposals that are watertight, with all the data and facts and figures in. I'm telling you, no alternative party anywhere in the world will be able to do that because you just don't have the same resources or reach as the ruling party. It's a fact. You don't.
Unless you have a Freedom of Information Act and you have access to all
what I'm saying is even when you have the freedom of access, you don't have certain understanding that only the government of the day has.
Sure, but you have to try. You see, I want to be autonomous.
And that's why I'm saying, bearing that in mind, when I read in detail several of the manifestos, and I said this in my podcast, they were highly impressive. If you ask me,
yes.
Given all the constraints, all the resource limitations, lack of information act backing you up,
What
They
reason?
were able to come up with fairly credible. Of course, you can disagree with them, but the fact that they put in that kind of effort, 60 over policy proposals, it's not a pushover.
Sure.
Right? PSP, for example. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to be fair and realistic in the way we talk about this. I think the days of the bicycle thief opposition and the days of Harbin Singh going up on
Battery fellow.
Fullerton Square rally saying that Rajaratnam is a mi-goreng seller, those days are over. And
Yes.
we need to now look at these people and be fair about our expectations of them. I think I've given you all enough time to think about your 2 minutes.
We were listening to you.
Okay, so let's go with Michael.
I look at the manifesto. I even read all the proposals. I thought they were very impressive, right? I think SDP always had very impressive manifesto. The sad part is that you're not going to form the government. So what's the point? You put in a lot of work. So at the end of the day, I look at this election. What is missing from the manifesto is that it is the old playbook. Okay, I look out there. I find a new strategic landscape. There's an elephant in the room in this election, and nobody talks about it except the Economic Resilience Task Force, which is the PAP, is talking about it. But none of them addresses the threat that's coming, that's looming. Somehow I feel as I talk to people on the ground, I see, why is there the lack of enthusiasm at this point before the nomination day? Previously, at this point, the bookies are already giving out odds. So when you look at it, because the opposition is not talking about, you want to be an alternative voice, what is the alternative vision? To me, I look at it, so the Third World War has started, launch 2nd April. Okay? So who is talking about it? Nobody's talking about it. The young people are feeling, not what is going to happen in the election, what's going to happen after the election. Right? That's my view. They are not looking at, say, I want more opposition members in parliament, but they want to say that, look, am I going to get my job? I'm going to retain my job. The election, to me, is thinking global and voting local. For the first time, the elephant in the room cannot be ignored, and the elephant is foreign interference because of this changed strategic landscape.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you are saying, if I understand you correctly, is the opposition or the alternative parties are still using the old playbook.
Old playbook.
They're not really confronting the big issue
Yeah.
that is looming large, which is the foreign interference, which is tariffs,
The enemy is
etc.,
coming,
etc.
yeah.
Okay, right? Now, from what I've seen, they do deal with that, but there are also surveys that have highlighted that have said that the young people and as well as the older people, the primary focus is not external; it's internal. So
For this
local
election.
issues. So I believe that's what the alternative parties are doing. They are focusing on what the people are focusing on, which is cost of living, GST, etc., etc.
Yes.
That's my response to that, right? Balji?
Yeah, what I hope to see in this election, I think that's your question right now. Before I just go into, I'm quite impressed with the quality of the candidates that have come through.
Both sides.
Both sides, yeah. I was just
Yes.
about to say that, no? That both from the PAP side and from the opposition. I'm quite impressed, I before coming here, I decided to do a kind of a short list of the candidates, that I am impressed with. Of course, Harpreet is there. I won't talk much about him because so much has been talked about him. But I would like to talk about some others. PAP, I'm quite impressed with this Marshall Lim,
Yeah.
who has, and I'm impressed with him. He's a lawyer. I'm impressed with him. I watch his videos. I'm impressed with him because he has the gumption to go into Hougang,
Yeah.
Lau Tia Kiang's territory, if I can call it that, and I'm going to fight that, knowing that the chances of losing are great. I like the kind of people, personally. Then there is from PSP, I'm very impressed with this guy called Lawrence Speck,
Yeah.
Singapore Manufacturing Federation, his language, the way he speaks, the way he connects his job with what he can do. I'm very impressed. And Hamid Razak, who is a PAP candidate, orthopedic surgeon. Watching him, I don't know him at all. Just watching him, I can sense a certain humility in him that he wants to do good. I hope I'm right, And of course, Dr. Ong, mental health.
Yes.
Yes.
And of course, Goh Pei Ming from PAP, the army military officer.
Yeah.
Also very doesn't show he's military, but he's a common man. So I think it's a good thing to see. I mean, I'm sure there are more, but these are the people that I have put together. And so I'm glad I'm seeing this. I'm glad that many of these people will go through and will become MPs. Let's wait and see. The other one is that my hope, my wish is that this will be a clean fight.
Yes.
Don't go and do pasang kaki. No, I'm not referring to any political party. Everyone can do pasang kaki, right?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Let it be a good fight, right? Please don't use POFMA, if possible, right? Please don't, because POFMA, my view, which some may disagree, it doesn't work. Has it worked? Kenneth Jaradnam has got 10 POFMAs, What has happened? So POFMA really doesn't work, So let's try other ways, as I think Viswa said. Let's convince people to your point of view. Let the better man or woman win. I should say better woman or man win.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you,
Politically
Balji.
correct, yes. Now,
And you look at me.
I would add to your list one other person that I'm particularly impressed with. I can't remember her surname, but Jasmine.
Lao.
Jasmine
Lau,
Lau.
yeah.
She was former
Ministry of Health.
Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Health. In all the videos I've seen of her, she's so down to earth. She's definitely very smart, but very down to earth, caring, without using platitudes and slogans. If you know what I mean. So you're absolutely right. It's so heartening to see bright young people, from a variety of backgrounds.
Yes.
Even if they're from the military, as you said, they come across differently. They don't come across military, if you know what I mean.
Correct.
So yes, I share that optimism, and I agree that we should celebrate this
Yes.
Yes.
by fighting fair.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you.
The lady has the last word.
As always.
And the lady is almost the same age as the country. At 57, I'm 3 years younger than Singapore. So was it Balji earlier who said that I'm sort of, or maybe Michael said that I'm sort of like midlife, right? And I feel that about this election. At SG's 60 election, I feel there is this new energy, from not just the expanded public square I talked about, the political and civic engagement, the participatory democratic conversations that we are having. I feel and I love, you have been very intentional, Viswa, this whole conversation of calling them alternative parties and not opposition, because it is only to our advantage as a country if we embrace diversity. In the organizational development theories and research, it's been shown unequivocally that you get creativity, you get innovation, you get resilience for an organization if there's diversity. And I think that's really where I would like us to start embracing, go into the manifestos for each of the political party, the wellspring of ideas in terms of their thoughts, their policy recommendations. I fervently believe that in the world we are in now and going into, no one has all the answers, but everyone has a bit of the answer for every problem that we have. So love the term. I've been very attentive to you wanting to use, always coming back to alternative party. I think candidates and parties will lose, in any election, any contestation. But Singapore must gain.
Yes.
I think at the end of the day, we must gain. So I'm totally with you both saying this must be a clean fight. Let's expand the space for more discourses. I also feel that we must really be okay with failures, right? And even I think increasingly I'm feeling very heartened with the 4G leaders and also with Prime Minister Lawrence Wong being open about the fact that they are not taking for granted.
Yeah.
Right, they're going to come in and as government, and that they're not actually going to lose some seats and maybe even some ministers. And anyone who's in entrepreneurship will tell you there isn't a lot of innovation and growth to be had if we haven't failed enough.
That's true.
So I hope to see this election as our inflection point, a watershed election in a different way, that we are actually going towards the next 60 years of the country with the right attitudes, looking at our leaders to not just their intellectual ability and their background, but also their values. Are they bring courage? Are they bring conviction? Are they bring compassion? Are they bring clarity to what they want to do, stepping up. So, so very excited, very energized.
I can tell.
Very buzzy, actually, very buzzy. Yeah.
So thank you so much. That was slightly longer than 2 minutes.
Sorry.
But but you know what? It's wonderful to hear you speak with such passion. I'm very, very sure that this is going to be a much better run election.
Yes.
I feel it because I have faith in the 4G leaders.
Yes.
I think they do want to move on and be with the times.
Yes, they do.
And I'd like to end this, with your permission, I'd like to end with one sentiment that I think came through several times. And that is centered on the word respect. I think regardless of the differences of opinion we may have, even in this discourse, it's about listening to each other. And the reason why we're listening to each other is because we respect the person who is articulating that point of view.
Yes.
Even if I disagree, I need to give you the respect. So for me, the ultimate respect needs to be given to all the candidates, regardless of whether you are PAP or regardless of whether you are in the alternative parties. It takes time, commitment, hard work, humiliation sometimes, and you are prepared to go through all of that.
Yes.
So why don't we give them respect?
Yes.
They've earned it, and I sure hope that will reign supreme. Respect.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Viswa.
Thank you.